Hey guys, Mathel here once again, and this time around on the next build, I decided to tackle Blade Flurry, which is a skill I pretty much haven't invested heavily into in maybe a few years. It feels like it's a bit off to the wayside, but went all in on this one to just commit to make sure Blade Flurry is the skill, and I'm using two Varunastras as a Gladiator with the new Weapon Master node that gives you a whole bunch of extra perks for using the Varunastras, which is just a little bit nicer, but the main draw of Varunastra is just being able to use all kinds of weapon nodes on the tree and then clusters as well. And the end result is a pretty decent, solid build. You can have a lot of block from Gladiator. We're using Retaliate, skill of Swordstorm, which sometimes helps. I don't know, hard to tell, like a lot of the time, because you have to be up close and personal with it, and then you can spam it sometimes. Sometimes you can't, just because of the node that gives you 50% chance to keep using it. Yeah, the kind of idea was to go a physical version of Blade Flurry as a Gladiator with bleed pops to help the clear. The problem is you can't actually have bleed pops work if you one-shot things, and thus don't get a bleed up first. So I had that as an initial plan, and I tried to do that, but the damage was kind of too good against most small enemies, and instead ended up pivoting to full cold and then just relying on Vaal Bladeflurry and Herald of Ice to do most of the clear and the satisfaction for the build. So Vaal Bladeflurry is actually a button I'd basically never pressed up till now, and it is a very juicy button to be pressing. It's a lot of fun in this build. It's a lot of fun in the in Bladeflurry builds in general, I think. It's essentially something you channel until it gets to max stacks, you release, and then anything that's inside that circle is going to get attacked after the channel is over. So it's kind of like Vaal Flame Blast, or a Flame Blast, I suppose. You wind it up, let it go, and then a bunch of cool shit happens. So Blade Flurry itself, to actually feel good, you do need to fix a few things, like a bit of area, a lot of attack speed, and hitting pretty hard. And then if you want, you can also add something for clear, which is either some kind of pops or Herald of Ice, something like that. Once all that is actually solved, it's a really good feeling skill and something worth looking into, especially with Vaal Bladeflurry. That's really changed my tune on the skill while I've been playing it, because you get to press it pretty often, and it does really clean house when it comes to AoE. It does absolutely nothing for single target, which is a bit sad because it feels like it should. Like, you know, wind up a Vaal Bladeflurry and then just attack everything a few times, but it just, yeah, it's like it gives you like one attack on a single target enemy, something like that. But single target isn't too much of an issue at the moment. I think the character has something like 15 million DPS while being fairly durable because of all of the Gladiator block, and also a bit of damage reduction through things like Arctic Armor, some endurance charges, good fortify generation. We got instant leech thanks to the Weapon Master Gladiator notable, and yeah, there's a solid enough setup here to be able to do pretty much any skill. Varunastra plus any melee skill in this kind of a setup is going to be just fine. Already tried my first tier 17 at the end of the stream yesterday, and it felt like nothing. Like, it was just a very regular map, maybe a few tankier rares than usual, but taking pretty much no damage, because block with the lucky block thing means that you are at like 80 to 90 block most of the time, and then yeah, all you gotta do is make sure you're not really getting one shot, and even with Abyssus on, we're not really taking much damage. This does feel like the tankiest Abyssus character I've ever played, and I guess that's mostly just because Gladiator's pretty damn strong right now. You don't necessarily have to use an Abyssus in this type of setup, especially if you're cold-based. You could probably run a Heat Shiver to have similar results, but the plan was to always kind of put Abyssus on and just see if we can survive while wearing it, and so far it has not been an issue. So nothing wrong with some Abyssus action here. It's been a quite a decent while since I've used Abyssus because it's hard to justify in today's world where you can actually get some pretty good defenses and you don't want to nerf those, and you can also get some really good offense without an Abyssus. So it's tough to justify, but like I've yet to use any really crazy overpowered stuff like Relic Ash, so we're still using some low-key items like an Abyssus. And yeah, single target's decent, the playstyle is okay. I don't really like bouncing around too much as Leap Slam at the moment. Would much prefer just running fast, but currently that's just what the setup is like. If we're to fit in a Tincture to have some extra burst damage on demand. It's my first time trying a Tincture in a character without being a Warden as well, and it's doable. But you basically just, it's a button you press for a bit of extra DPS sometimes instead of turning it into a flask, which is just sustainable always. So far so good. The character's actually been pretty damn solid. I don't know if I'll take on any Ubers with this, maybe, but 17's for sure, just more farming. For now though, let me go ahead and show you how I built the character up till now. So here's a character level 93 Glad. This is not Bleed. Not a Bleed build. Probably World First Gladiator that's not doing that. Yep. But the idea was Bleed Pops, which would have helped a lot with clear if they were reliable. They just weren't. They couldn't be. Not if you're going to hit this hard. They would be pretty nice if you like doing a non-crit version of a Bladeflurry, something like that, or yeah, even just bleed builds. Love the bleed pops, but they did not factor into this build, so instead I end up grabbing the retaliation node that just lets me use the retaliation a bit more comfortably, and it does something in the build, but I still don't even have really good links for it yet. Need to get rid of the crit strikes and probably the crit damage, but we are based around Bladeflurry. And we pivoted into full cold, which felt pretty damn good because Herald of Ice feels super good with Bladeflurry. And then we just, yeah, have to convert some of our damage and scale a bit more off of cold. Things like Hatred, which is still a pretty good gem if you aren't using it the way you kind of used to specifically. So let's say we have 100% of our normal damage, no extra cold anywhere, then Hatred's going to be 40 extra cold, which is a pretty substantial boost. It's just that if you stack more and more fizzes extra, then it becomes less and less good, if that makes sense. So we're based around Varunastras, counts as all one-handed melee weapon types. It's slow base still, unfortunately, and you've got to fix crit. But once that happens, then it's got decent damage on it, and it can let you do several decent damage wheels on the tree, like, you know, swords and axes. If you can get to them, there's a lot of good nodes over there, but typically these days it's a lot better to just stay very local. So this is probably the least travel you'll ever see on a passive tree. It's best to stay pretty local and do cluster jewels, something like this. So axe and sword ones, and then you actually double dip on them, so you're getting 12% damage for swords, 12% damage for axes, and that's per point. So each of these nodes in the end for us is worth about 30 damage per point, and then 3 attack speed. This one, however, is a better crafted jewel, so it's got 35 effect, 3% attack speed, and each of these is 32 damage and 4 attack speed. So you can imagine 10 points here, we're looking at 320 damage and 40 attack speed. Whatever else you can get on there is a nice bonus too. So to craft these, you basically just grab a base for 5C, and then Alt, Regal, Exalt, Annul, anything you can, whenever you see 35 effect and or 3 attack speed, and eventually combine the two. That's, in my experience, the most kind of reliable way to do it for decent cost, but you could also just spam like cast, I think, attack speed rerolls on or speed rerolls on Harvest. You could spam Chaos, you can, you know, Scour Alk, that sort of stuff. Eventually something will happen, but I like doing Alt Regal, Exalt, Annul until some combination happens. And yeah, this one is a pretty good one. This one, less good. You are ideally going for that 35 effect, 3 attack speed combo, because you don't get the 35 effect, then the 3 attack speed never becomes 4, and thus on this one I am missing 10 attack speed total. But you try and get something else on there as a suffix, so 4 attributes on this one, some chaos res on this one, and that just helps you fill out your character a little bit more. Since we are Varunastra as well, the other really big perk is just going for Overlord shopping on a character, on any sort of attack-based character. So you type in Overlord, you do Megalomaniac, then you just scroll to see what else you can combine with Overlord. It gives you very easy access to Fortify, that's pretty reliable. And then, yeah, this one also has 10 Cold Pen against shield enemies and some life. This thing was 30C, no one wanted it, so cool, I do. We then have a Lethal Pride that does a little bit of double damage, nothing too crazy, 3 double damage nodes, I think, and some melee multi. And this one was 1 divine. And aside from that, grabbed a Watcher's Eye for, I think it was 1.5 divines. Divined it a couple times to get better crit for hatred, and that solved my crit issues. And just some attack speed. So like I said, Bladeflurry, especially with Varunastra, fixing attack speed is the pivotal point to feeling better on the build. If you just start out with like some really fast claws instead, you can have a very good feeling Bladeflurry with lots of attack speed, but since we're Varunastra, we need attack speed pretty much everywhere. So we're getting attack speed on gloves, attack speed on the tree, on the clusters, and just grabbed a couple of mirror rings. Like these are worthless, I don't know, 20C, 100C, something like that. Lots of life. Need some stats, so Amulet with some stats and stuff, I think it was 1 divine. And then craft our own belt using some recombinating action. This one's nothing crazy, but I did recombinate a belt worth 40 divines, so recombinating seems pretty good at the moment, at least for belts from my experience. And then boots, since we needed to try and become ailment immune, grabbed a fractured suppress for 1 divine, and then used loathings until good things happened, and then tried to fix the prefixes with Eldritch Currency. The chest is currently just a chest I picked up off the ground, so it's only got 4 affixes. I haven't done anything with it yet because I will fracture orb it eventually, because if it lands the Fizz reduction or the suppress, it's worth 40 divines, and I don't want to fracture orb it right now and then wear it in case people think I have been using a 40 divine chest. It's just a chest found on the ground that has those 2 good affixes, and then it's got life. So I would otherwise, you know, if I want to, just slam a suffix or something like that. But like I said, I'm going to fracture orb it eventually and then probably sell it. So that's the chest, and we're just looking for suppress, maybe some fizz reduction, life, or you can go different directions, get a lot of evasion armor if you want, because we can't use iron reflexes if we have a lethal pride here, so we can't stack that much armor. It's just going to be a bit of both at the moment, and you know, when things are doing better, it's a bit better. You can have a taste of hate there instead if you want. Either way, we are currently doing Bladeflurry, Pulverize, so that plus that, and then the Weapon Master node does give us a lot of area. If you actually spec into some area for Bladeflurry, like these nodes here as well, for example, Bladeflurry area scales really well. It goes like off screen in the end, so it gets pretty crazy. It even feels better than Reeve, which should have like bigger area, but Bladeflurry area just seems to scale. So we've got Pulverize, early damage with attacks, Awaken Cold Pen, that also gives us cold exposure, Melee Fizz, and Infused Channeling. So that also helps us take a bit less damage. When you're channeling Vaal Bladeflurry, you take 50 less damage while channeling. So that's what lets you just like dive into packs and Vaal Bladeflurry and then do a big unleash. It's a very fun playstyle and button to press, and recommend trying it at least once somewhere. You could probably fit it into other melee builds too. We then have just some rage that we're gaining from Leap Slam, but I get rage from the Axe Mastery, I think. Maybe something else. I did have rage over there to begin with, but I cut that entire area. You could have rage here as well. You could also, something I was going to do was Impossible Escape. So use a jewel to go over here and get crit, get rage, and also this node for damage and area. It's very much a good option. It's pretty cheap to do. I decided not to do it this time around, but it is probably worth doing. Aside from that, there's not much else to really mention. Yep, an Assassin Mark on Life Tap. My Sword Storm, like I said, does something at the moment, but we do still need to beef it up a bit, and then I'll do a bit more. And then just, yep, using an Arctic Armor for some damage reduction, and Blood Rage for some frenzies, and getting some single target frenzies from the sword mastery there. Versatile combatant and some block spec across the board gives me a lot of block. So a lot of block, and then when you block recently, you get lucky block and you become a god. It's very tanky and durable with this sort of thing. If you haven't tried it, it's pretty insane. Yep, instant leech and a bit more damage against things when they're low life. So there's a lot of good stuff on here. Of course, with Varunastra, you only get one application of this. You know, 2 Varunastras doesn't mean you get twice as many of Weapon Master. It just is a tick box to tick whether or not you're wearing that type of weapon. So we get one of each of those. I'm dual wielding Varunastras because I want to dual wield in this character, especially to up my attack speed. You could instead do a shield and then spec all the shield stuff, but you'd be a bit slower. Yeah, Varunastras were not very expensive. Once again, kind of weapon that no one really cares about. Better rolls are going to cost a bit more. I divined these because we could afford to and have some fun. A decent roll would probably be 1 or 2 divines. I don't know what they're at now. Either way, pretty decent, fun weapon to still play around with and take all the way. Slayers might be better just to build into this sort of shit. As always, fixes your crit, fixes everything else. And you can make some pretty insane Ralakesh Varunastra Slayers, I think. I went a bit more hipster out with Gladiator, and it's worked out. I'll probably play the character for another little bit in tier 17s and stuff. Yeah, I think that's all we need to mention. So, Bladeflurry, still on the menu. Try it out in some builds. It's pretty damn fun. Fix its problems, and it's a really good skill still. And Vaal Bladeflurry, super fun button to press. So thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.